The train station smelled of diesel fumes, stale coffee, and the specific, damp anxiety of people running away. Elias sat on a wooden bench in the dark corner of the platform, clutching a battered leather satchel to his chest like it contained a bomb. In a way, it did. Inside was his phone, which had been vibrating incessantly for the last 3 hours. Buzz, buzz, buzz. 47 missed calls, 32 texts. Mom, Dad, Sarah, especially Sarah. He didn't look at the screen. He couldn't. If he looked, he would crack. If he read a single word, the guilt would crush his ribs. He would get back in a cab, go back to the cathedral, put on the tuxedo that was currently crumpled in a trash can 3 blocks away, and say "I do" to a woman he loved like a sister, but could never, ever love as a wife. The automated voice echoed through the cavernous station. It was the sweetest sound Elias had ever heard. He stood up, his legs shaky and feeling like gelatin. He was wearing stiff, dark jeans and a thick wool sweater he had bought at a thrift store an hour ago, shedding his old life layer by layer. He boarded the train, keeping his head down, chin tucked into his collar, terrified that someone would shout his name, that his father would come marching down the platform with security, that the world would stop him. But no one did. He found his seat, Car 4, Seat 12A. It was a window seat. He slid into it, pressing his forehead against the cold glass. The train hissed, a release of pneumatic pressure that sounded like a heavy sigh, and then lurched forward. The city began to slide away. The gray buildings, the rain-slicked streets, the life he had meticulously built for 28 years, it all blurred into streaks of color and then vanished into the black mouth of the tunnel. Elias closed his eyes and exhaled for the first time in months. Elias jumped, his eyes snapping open. Standing in the aisle was a man. He was tall, wearing a worn brown leather jacket that looked like it had seen more of the world than Elias ever would. He had a canvas camera bag slung over one shoulder and messy, dark hair that looked like he'd just run his hands through it in frustration or excitement. No, Elias stammered, pulling his legs in to make room. The man smiled. It wasn't a polite customer service smile. It was a real one, crinkling the corners of his eyes and softening his face. Thanks. He stowed his bag overhead with easy grace and sat down in 12B. A wave of scent washed over Elias, rain, old leather, and cedarwood. It was earthy and grounding. "I'm Gabriel," the man said, extending a hand. Elias hesitated. He wasn't supposed to talk to people. He was supposed to be invisible. He was supposed to be disappearing. But Gabriel's hand hung there, open and waiting. "Elias," he said finally, taking the hand. Gabriel's grip was warm, his palm rough with calluses. "Nice to meet you, Elias," Gabriel said. He pulled a heavy DSLR camera out of his bag and began cleaning the lens with a microfiber cloth. "Yes," Elias said. Then, because he couldn't help himself, the truth slipped out. Gabriel paused, his hands freezing on the lens. He glanced at Elias with curiosity. I just bought the ticket to the end of the line," Elias admitted, his voice barely a whisper. Gabriel's eyebrows went up. He capped the lens. Elias froze, his heart hammered against his ribs. "People who buy tickets to the end of the line without a plan are usually running away from something," Gabriel said. His tone was easy, devoid of judgment, just an observation. "Or running to something." Elias looked out the window. The train had emerged from the tunnel and was picking up speed, cutting through the suburbs. Snow was starting to fall, light flurries swirling in the slipstream like white sparks. "Away," Elias whispered. Gabriel nodded slowly. He didn't press. He didn't ask what Elias was running from. He just went back to cleaning his lens. "Well," Gabriel said softly, "you picked a good train for it. This thing is basically a steel tube hurtling through the void." 3 hours later, the world had turned white. The light flurries had mutated into a full-blown blizzard. The train was winding its way through the Rockies now, climbing higher into the mountains. The view from the window was terrifyingly beautiful, jagged black peaks disappearing into swirling clouds of snow. Pines bowed heavy under the weight of white. Elias hadn't moved. He had watched the landscape change, hypnotized by the motion. His phone was still buzzing intermittently in his bag, a muffled heartbeat of his old life trying to reach him. Gabriel had spent the time editing photos on a laptop, occasionally getting up to stretch or grab a coffee. He was easy company. He didn't demand conversation, but his presence was a solid, comforting weight next to Elias. Ding gong! "Attention passengers!" The conductor's voice crackled over the intercom. It sounded tinny and strained. "We are experiencing some significant weather delays ahead. We're going to be moving at a reduced speed for safety due to limited visibility." "Reduced speed," Gabriel muttered, looking out the window. "That's optimistic." Elias asked, a flicker of anxiety rising in his chest. He liked structure. He liked safety. Being on a metal snake in a blizzard was not in his comfort zone. "Nah," Gabriel said, turning to him with a reassuring grin. "These trains are built like tanks." Elias managed a weak smile. Gabriel studied him for a moment, his gaze piercing. You're gripping the armrest so hard your knuckles are white," Gabriel pointed out gently. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small battered silver flask. "It's bourbon," Gabriel whispered conspiratorially. "Don't tell the conductor." Elias stared at the flask. He wasn't a drinker. He was the responsible one, the designated driver, the good son. But the good son was currently hyperventilating on a train to nowhere. Elias took the flask. He took a swig. The liquid burned his throat, hot and sharp, and settled in his stomach like a warm stone. "Thanks," Elias gasped, handing it back. "So," Gabriel capped the flask, "since we're moving at the speed of a majestic glacier, tell me, what did you leave behind? A job? A debt?" Elias looked at Gabriel. He looked at the kindness in those dark eyes. He realized, with a jolt, that he wanted to tell him. He wanted to tell someone who didn't know him, didn't know his family, didn't have expectations. "A wedding," Elias said. Gabriel paused. "Wow." Gabriel let out a low whistle. 2 hours ago, Elias checked his watch. "Right about now, they're probably announcing that the groom is missing. My mother is probably fainting. Sarah—" Guilt, sharp and nauseating, twisted in his gut. He put his head in his hands. "No," Gabriel said firmly. "Monsters don't care if they hurt people." "I left her at the altar, Gabriel," Gabriel asked. "I love her," Elias said passionately. "She's my best friend. We grew up together. Our families. They planned this since we were 10. It made sense. It was the perfect merger." "But I couldn't breathe," Elias whispered. "Every time I thought about the future, the house, the kids, the country club membership, I felt like I was drowning. I looked in the mirror this morning, in my tuxedo, and I didn't recognize the person staring back. I realized, if I did this, if I married her, I would disappear." Gabriel was silent for a long moment. The train shuddered as it hit a snowdrift on the tracks, slowing down even more. Gabriel asked softly. Elias looked up. He met Gabriel's gaze. "I don't know," Elias admitted. "Well," Gabriel smiled, a soft, sad expression. "That's what the train is for." The train stopped completely at 6 p.m. It wasn't a station stop. It was a grinding, screeching halt in the middle of a mountain pass. The lights flickered and died, plunging the car into gray twilight, before the emergency backup lights hummed to life, dim, amber strips running along the floor. "Ladies and gentlemen," the conductor sounded stressed now, "due to excessive snow accumulation on the tracks and a down signal ahead, we are going to be holding here for the foreseeable future. Please remain in your seats." A collective groan went through the car. People pulled out phones, no signal, adjusted blankets, and started complaining. Gabriel looked out the window. It was pitch black now. All you could see was the snow piling up against the glass like a living thing. "Looks like we're camping," Gabriel said. Elias asked. "In these mountains? Could be hours." Elias felt the panic rising again. He was trapped, stuck in a metal box with his own thoughts. "Hey," Gabriel nudged his knee with his own. "Don't spiral." Elias looked. "We're okay," Gabriel said. "We have heat, we have seats, and we have bourbon." "You were looking at my camera earlier," Gabriel said. I used to take photos," Elias said. In college. Law school. Gabriel nodded. Of course. Portraits, mostly. People. I like trying to catch the moment when they forgot the camera was there. The truth? Gabriel supplied. Yeah. Elias smiled wistfully. He's right. Gabriel laughed. They don't. I'm broke half the time. I live out of a suitcase. I sleep in hostels. That sounds terrifying, Elias said. It is. It's also exhilarating. I've seen sunrise over the Andes. I've had coffee in Istanbul. I've been lonely in Paris and happy in a ditch in Thailand. It's a trade-off, Elias. I had security, Elias murmured. And now you have freedom, Gabriel said. Good. They talked for hours. As the temperature outside dropped and the windows iced over, creating a cocoon of frost, Elias and Gabriel built a world between two seats. Elias talked about the pressure of being the only son of a dynasty, about Sarah, who deserved someone who could love her wholly, about the suffocating weight of expectation. Gabriel talked about his travels, about running away from a broken home at 18, about the loneliness of being a perpetual observer, always behind the lens, never in the frame. That's why I take photos, Gabriel confessed, his voice low in the dim car. Most other passengers were asleep now, slumped against windows. If I capture a moment, it proves I was there. You exist, Elias said, looking at him. Gabriel looked back. The amber emergency light cast shadows across his face, highlighting the sharp angle of his jaw, the softness of his mouth. Gabriel whispered, sometimes I feel like a ghost. You're leaving a trace now, Elias said. The words hung in the air, heavy and charged. Elias hadn't meant to say them. Or maybe he had. Gabriel's eyes searched Elias's face. Elias's heart hammered against his ribs. This was the precipice. This was the truth he had hidden even from himself. No, Elias whispered, that I could ever be the man they wanted me to be. That I could be a husband to Sarah. He trailed off, his voice breaking. Gabriel finished for him. The word barely a breath. Elias squeezed his eyes shut. A tear leaked out. He nodded. He felt a hand cover his. Gabriel's hand. Warm, rough, grounding. It's okay, Gabriel said. Elias opened his eyes. Gabriel wasn't looking at him with pity. He was looking at him with recognition. I ran too, Gabriel said. A long time ago. Small town in Ohio. They didn't take kindly to boys who looked at other boys. I left in the middle of the night, Elias asked. No, Gabriel admitted, but the breathing gets easier. Around midnight, the heating system faltered. It didn't die completely, but the fans slowed to a pathetic whir, and the bitter chill from the frosted windows began to seep into the car like invisible smoke. Passengers woke up, grumbling, pulling coats tighter, curling into balls. Gabriel asked, his voice low, vibrating through the quiet space between them. Freezing. Elias shivered, hugging his thin thrift store sweater to his chest. His teeth were threatening to chatter. Come here, Gabriel said. It wasn't a question. He lifted the armrest between them, pushing it back until it was flush with the seat, erasing the barrier. Elias blinked, his heart giving a traitorous thump. Body heat, Gabriel said pragmatically, though his eyes were dark and unreadable. Elias hesitated for a microsecond. The old Elias, the one who followed rules, would have stayed in his seat. But that man was gone. He shifted closer. Gabriel opened his heavy leather jacket like a wing. Elias leaned into him, and Gabriel wrapped the jacket around Elias's shoulders, pulling him flush against his side. It was overwhelming. The heat of Gabriel's body was a shock against Elias's cold side. The smell of him, cedar, old leather, and the faint warm scent of bourbon filled Elias's senses. He could feel the solid, steady thump of Gabriel's heart against his own arm. Gabriel murmured. His lips were dangerously close to Elias's ear. Much, Elias breathed. His voice sounded wrecked to his own ears. They sat like that for a long time, listening to the wind howl outside. The storm was a beast trying to get in, scratching at the glass, but they were safe in their little cocoon of heat. Gabriel's hand, which had been resting on Elias's shoulder, began to move. It was a slow, idle caress, his thumb rubbing circles into the knit of Elias's sweater, then sliding up to brush the nape of his neck. Elias shivered again, but not from the cold. A jolt of electricity shot down his spine. He involuntarily leaned his head back, resting it against Gabriel's shoulder, exposing his throat. "You're tense," Gabriel whispered. His fingers kneaded the tight muscle at the base of Elias's neck. "Something like that," Elias managed to say. Gabriel shifted slightly, turning his body so he was facing Elias more fully. The jacket created a tent over them, a private world in the middle of the public car. Elias looked up. In the amber emergency lighting, Gabriel's eyes were pools of shadow, intense and searching. Gabriel reached out with his free hand. He traced the line of Elias's jaw with his fingertips, a touch so feather-light it felt like a brand. He brushed his thumb over Elias's bottom lip, which parted on a shaky exhale. "I don't have any secrets left," Elias whispered. "Good," Gabriel said. The air between them was suddenly thin, charged, with a static that made Elias's skin prickle. He looked at Gabriel's mouth, soft, inviting, just inches away. He felt a magnetic pull, undeniable and terrifying. Gabriel's gaze dropped to Elias's lips, lingering there. The intent was unmistakable. Gabriel asked softly. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Elias nodded, a tiny, desperate movement. Gabriel leaned in. The first brush of lips was tentative, a question asked and answered in the dark. Gabriel's lips were warm, dry, and firm. Elias let out a small, broken sound and pressed closer, his hands clutching the lapels of Gabriel's jacket. That sound seemed to snap something in Gabriel. He groaned low in his throat and deepened the kiss. It wasn't gentle anymore. It was hungry. It was the taste of freedom and fear mixed together. Gabriel's hand slid up into Elias's hair, gripping the back of his head, tilting him to deepen the angle. His other arm tightened around Elias's waist, pulling him so close there was no air left between them. Elias's mouth opened under the pressure, and Gabriel swept inside. It was intoxicating, the taste of coffee and bourbon and man. Elias felt like he was drowning, but for the first time in his life, he didn't want to be saved. He wanted to go under. Gabriel pulled back just an inch, both of them gasping for air. Their foreheads rested against each other. "Elias," Gabriel rasped, his voice wrecked. "You have no idea how long I've wanted to do that." Elias laughed breathlessly. "I'm a patient man," Gabriel smirked, though his eyes were dark with heat. He kissed Elias again, slower this time, savoring it. He kissed the corner of his mouth, his jaw, the sensitive spot just below his ear. Elias arched into the touch, his hand sliding under Gabriel's jacket to feel the warmth of his shirt, the solid muscle of his back. He felt grounded. He felt real. "Stay with me," Gabriel whispered against his skin. "Tonight, tomorrow, I'm not going anywhere," Elias promised, threading his fingers through Gabriel's hair. They settled back into the seat, limbs tangled together. Gabriel kept his arm wrapped tight around Elias, his hand resting possessively over Elias's heart. Elias closed his eyes. The storm raged on outside, but for the first time in 28 years, the storm inside him was quiet. He fell asleep to the rhythm of Gabriel's breathing, feeling warmer than he ever had in his life. Elias woke up to blinding light. The sun was reflecting off the snow outside, filling the car with a brilliance that hurt his eyes. The storm was over. He realized he was drooling on Gabriel's shoulder. He sat up quickly, embarrassed. "Oh, God." Gabriel stretched, groaning as his joints popped. "Mornin', sunshine." "Surprisingly, yes," Elias admitted. He felt stiff, his neck hurt, and he was thirsty. But his head was clear. The buzzing anxiety that had been his constant companion for years was gone, replaced by a quiet calm. "Look," Gabriel pointed out the window. The world was a pristine, untouched white wonderland. The mountains sparkled against a deep blue sky. It looked like a brand new world. "It's beautiful," Elias said. "Attention, passengers," the conductor's voice was back, sounding cheerful. "Good news, the plows have cleared the track ahead. We should be moving in about 20 minutes. The car erupted in cheers. Gabriel looked at Elias. "Jasper." "Yeah, good hiking, good coffee." The train lurched, the metal groaning as it broke free from the ice. Slowly, agonizingly, it began to move. Elias watched the snow-covered trees roll by. He thought about his phone, still turned off in his bag. He knew what was waiting for him when he turned it on. Anger, disappointment, chaos. Elias asked, looking at Gabriel. Gabriel was packing his camera bag. He stopped and looked at Elias. "That depends," Gabriel said. "You bought a ticket to the end of the line." "I'm getting off in Jasper," Gabriel said. Elias felt a pang of panic. "But," Gabriel continued, slinging the bag over his shoulder, "I could use an assistant, someone to carry the tripod." Elias stared at him. "I'm offering you an adventure, Elias," Gabriel said. "You ran away to find yourself." Elias looked at his own reflection in the window. He looked rumpled. He had dark circles under his eyes. He needed a shave. But he looked alive. "I don't know anything about photography," Elias said. "I'll teach you." Gabriel smiled. The train pulled into the Jasper station an hour later. Passengers flooded the aisle, eager to get off, to stretch, to smoke, to call their families. Elias sat in his seat, clutching his satchel. Gabriel stood in the aisle. He didn't rush. He just waited. He held out his hand. Gabriel asked. Elias looked at the hand. He thought about the life he was supposed to have, the safety, the predictability, the country club, the wife. Then he thought about the kiss in the dark, the warmth of the leather jacket, the feeling of finally breathing. He stood up. He grabbed his bag, and he took Gabriel's hand. "Yes," Elias said. They walked off the train together, stepping onto the platform, into the crisp, cold mountain air. Elias reached into his bag. He pulled out his phone. He looked at it one last time. Then, he walked over to a trash can and dropped it in. He turned back to Gabriel, who was watching him with a grin. Gabriel asked. "Ready," Elias said. As they walked away from the station, toward the mountains and the unknown, Gabriel stopped. "Hold on," he said. He pulled out his camera. Elias asked. "The light," Gabriel said. "It's perfect. And you?" Click. The shutter snapped. Elias smiled. It was the first real smile of his new life. He wasn't running away anymore. He was finally arriving.